I want to ask you something unusual. Take a moment and imagine your ordinary Tuesday morning. The coffee is brewing, the sun is filtering through the blinds, and the day feels predictable, just like any other. Suddenly, your phone rings with an unknown number. You almost ignore it, but for some reason, you answer. And the voice on the other end of the line is unmistakable. It's me, Elon Musk. After a brief, stunning moment of silence, I say just 7 words that hang in the air like a paradox. I want to offer you a job. Now, before your mind races to rockets, to the sprawling factory floors in Texas, or to the complex algorithms that power our future, I want you to pause, just for a second. Stop and actually write the word job in the comments below if you would even consider staying on the line to hear what comes next. What kind of job do you imagine I'm talking about? Most people immediately picture a world of gleaming steel and humming servers, of late-night coding sessions and boardroom meetings filled with numbers that stretch to the horizon. But this time, it's none of that. This isn't about engineering a new spacecraft. It's not about writing a single line of code, and it's not about assembling the next generation of electric vehicles. This is about something far more rare, infinitely more valuable, and frankly, something that only people over 50 truly seem to possess in abundance. Because let's be honest with each other, life teaches us things that no textbook, no university, and no piece of sophisticated software could ever hope to explain. When you have lived for 5 decades or more, you have seen the great cycles of life repeat themselves. You have weathered storms, not just in the abstract world of business forecasts, but in the deeply personal realms of your work and your family. You have learned the brutal, beautiful lessons of patience, the quiet strength of resilience, and the profound clarity of perspective. You understand, in your very bones, that sometimes the smartest decision is not the loudest one shouted in a meeting, but the quiet, considered whisper that changes everything in the long run. That is precisely why the role I am offering is not that of an engineer, a technician, or an executive. The title is simple, yet it holds more weight than any of those. The role is a life consultant. Not the kind who sits in a polished office with a framed diploma on the wall dispensing rehearsed advice. No, this is the kind of consultant who brings wisdom that has been carved out of real years, real struggles, real victories, and devastating losses. I need people like you, people who have lived long enough to recognize what truly matters when everyone else is too young, too distracted, or too busy chasing ghosts to see it. If this idea resonates with you, if you feel that flicker of recognition, take a moment to hit the like button. It lets me know that this message is reaching the right people. Imagine sitting across the table from a group of brilliant young engineers. Their minds are like supernovas, capable of designing the future itself. But they are also just one critical mistake away from complete burnout, from losing their personal balance, or from forgetting the fundamental reason why they even started this journey in the first place. Imagine being the one voice in that room, the calm and steady presence that says, "Slow down, think again. Don't just chase speed, chase meaning." That single voice, your voice, could save them years of regret. That voice could fundamentally alter the trajectory of a company. That voice could change lives. You see, technology may be the engine that shapes our future, but wisdom is the guardian that protects it. And wisdom, true wisdom, almost always resides in people who have lived long enough to carry scars and stories, not just diplomas and titles. So yes, if you are over 50, if you have ever had a fleeting thought that your best years were behind you, let me say this to you as clearly as I can. I do not believe that for a second. I believe your most impactful years might still be ahead of you because you now possess something that money can never buy and youth can never fake: genuine, lived experience. And that is the job I want to offer you. To share that experience, to pass it on, to ensure that the next generation doesn't just build faster, but builds better. So let me ask you again, if I really called you tomorrow and offered you this role, would you accept it? Because the truth is, this job isn't about sitting in an office from 9 to 5, shuffling papers, or falling back on old habits. It's about providing something that nearly every company in the world is desperately, often silently missing today. It's not intelligence, it's not skill, it is wisdom. And that's why this role matters more than most people could ever possibly realize. Think about it for a moment, and I mean really think. Across every field imaginable, from cutting-edge technology and healthcare to education and even the small family-owned business on the corner, there exists an army of young, ambitious, brilliant people. They are overflowing with energy and saturated with ideas.
They are convinced with the fiery certainty of youth that they can change the world. But do you know what they don't have? They don't have time-tested perspective. They haven't lived long enough to see what happens when you move too fast and break the wrong things. They haven't personally witnessed the consequences of ignoring balance, of placing professional success above family, or of believing that one job, one invention, or one paycheck holds the entire meaning of life. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you knew from experience that a certain path would lead to trouble, but you felt you couldn't speak up? Share your story in the comments below. You might be surprised how many others have felt the same way. This is precisely why I need you. It is not because you can operate machinery, design a circuit board, or code in Python. It is because you possess something far rarer and more essential, the long view. You have seen economic cycles swell and burst like bubbles. You have watched entire industries rise from nothing and then collapse into dust. You have navigated the treacherous landscapes of human relationships, seeing them tested, broken, and sometimes miraculously healed. All of that accumulated experience coalesces into a kind of internal compass, a navigational tool that the younger generations simply haven't had the time to build yet. This job would place you in the crucial position of an advisor, a mentor, and a protector of balance. Let's paint a more vivid picture. Imagine a young team fueled by caffeine and ambition working 20-hour days on a critical project. They wear their exhaustion like a badge of honor, believing that burnout is undeniable proof of their dedication. You would be the person who steps into that high-pressure environment, not with a command, but with a story. You would say, "Listen, I have been exactly where you are. I have seen brilliant people burn out. I have seen families fall apart because of this relentless pace. Slow down, adjust, protect yourselves." And in that one quiet moment of intervention, you might save not only their health, but the very project they are pouring their lives into. Or imagine a boardroom of executives so aggressively chasing quarterly profits that they have lost sight of their company's core purpose. They are on the verge of making a decision that is profitable in the short term, but ethically bankrupt in the long term. You would be the one to remind them, "I have lived long enough to see fortunes come and go like the tide. But meaning, values, and trust, those are the bedrock that lasts." Suddenly, the conversation shifts. The company avoids a catastrophic mistake that could have destroyed its reputation and, by extension, its future years down the line.
Do you see? This role is not small. It is not symbolic. It is the kind of role that makes the profound difference between success that lasts and success that fades, between building something truly great and building something tragically empty. People often think that age makes you less relevant in today's fast-paced world. I profoundly disagree. I believe age makes you more relevant than ever, but only if you are willing to share what you have lived through. Because the fundamental truth is that wisdom only grows when it is passed on. If it remains locked inside, it withers and dies with us. But if we share it, it becomes part of something bigger, shaping the future long after we are gone. If you find this perspective valuable and want to see more content that challenges conventional thinking, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. This job would not only give you a seat at the table, it would give you genuine influence. Influence over the way companies treat their people. Influence over the way young leaders learn how to lead. Influence over how we as a society define success in a world that too often forgets the human side of progress. And please, do not underestimate how much the younger generation needs you. They may project an aura of confidence, acting as if they have it all figured out. But deep down, many are desperate for guidance. They scroll through endless feeds of superficial advice online, searching for answers in books and podcasts, when the truth is that the most profound answers might be sitting right across the table from them, embodied in the experience of someone who has lived 50, 60, or 70 years and still carries the fire to share it. So yes, this is a job, but it is much more than just work. It is a mission. It is a mission to ensure that wisdom is not lost in a world obsessed with speed. It is a mission to remind us all that progress without perspective is a dangerous and hollow pursuit. It is a mission to ensure that as we build the future, we do not lose sight of the timeless values that make a life worth living. If you think your time has passed, let me assure you, it has not. It may, in fact, be just beginning. Because while youth builds the machines, it is age that guards the meaning behind them. Let me paint you another picture, a more detailed one. Imagine walking into a conference room. The air crackles with energy. It's filled with young, brilliant engineers. Their intelligence is undeniable. You can see it in their sharp eyes and feel it in the rapid cadence of their speech. Their laptops are covered in stickers, emblems of their passions and identities, and their heads are buzzing with a million ideas at once. They talk fast, they work faster, and they operate under the powerful assumption that they can solve any problem in the world simply by pushing harder, running longer, and never, ever stopping. And then you walk in. You don't rush. You have no need to. You have lived long enough to know that speed without direction is just a faster way to get lost. The room gradually gets quieter. It's not because you are the loudest or the most imposing figure, but because experience carries its own unique kind of authority, a gravity that bends the room toward it. You listen first. You speak second. And when you finally do speak, they lean in, because the truth is, they have never heard perspective delivered with such calm, unwavering certainty before. That is the job, to bring calm into the chaos, to introduce balance where ambition threatens to consume everything, to remind people who are too young to see the long, winding road ahead that the mistakes they make now can cast shadows that follow them for decades. Picture this specific scenario. A young project manager, let's call her Jessica, is on the verge of signing a partnership deal. On paper, it looks fantastic. The numbers are impressive, the projections are optimistic, and the pressure from above is immense. But something about it feels wrong in your gut. Why? Because you have seen this story play out before. You have witnessed companies, in a rush for a shortcut to success, sign way too much control, only to lose their soul and eventually everything else in the long run. You don't need a complex spreadsheet to quantify this risk. You lived through a version of it, perhaps years ago in your own business or career. And because you are in that room, you can stop them from making the same mistake. One carefully worded question from you. What does this contract look like in 5 years if they decide we are no longer aligned? Saves them from years of regret. Or imagine a team of 25-year-olds who believe they are invincible. They are burning the candle at both ends and in the middle, utterly convinced that working until exhaustion is the only path to greatness. But you have been there. You have seen what happens when health finally breaks down, when relationships crumble under the weight of neglect, when the sheer exhaustion steals the very joy that motivated you in the first place. You don't lecture them. Instead, you tell them a story about a brilliant colleague you once knew who collapsed under the pressure, or a friend who worked himself into a profound and lonely isolation. And suddenly, through the power of a real human story, they understand. They slow down. That small human correction may not just save their careers, it might very well save their lives. Are you beginning to see how powerful this is? You wouldn't be a passive observer in the corner. You would be a compass, a guidepost, a living mirror reflecting back the hard-won lessons that only life itself can teach. And the beauty of it is, you wouldn't have to pretend to be anyone other than who you are. You would need no fancy titles, no complicated corporate jargon. You would only need to be yourself, honest, real, and willing to share the map of the road you have already walked. And the beauty of it is, you wouldn't have to pretend to be anyone other than who you are. You would need no fancy titles, no complicated corporate jargon. You would only need to be yourself, honest, real, and willing to share the map of the road you have already walked. If you believe in the power of sharing stories to guide the next generation, let us know by typing storyteller in the comments. Your voice matters. And here is something else to consider. Companies like mine, with thousands of employees, are filled with people who are brilliant but often disconnected from a broader reality. They understand technology with an incredible depth, but they do not always understand life. That is where you come in. Your role as a consultant would be to constantly remind us of the human side of progress, the side that cannot be measured in charts or quarterly earnings reports, the side that asks, how does this decision affect families? How does this product shape communities? How will this choice be remembered? Not for its profit, but for its impact. Let me tell you why that matters so much. Technology can take us to Mars, but it is wisdom that will determine how we live once we get there. Machines construct towering skyscrapers, but it is perspective that decides whether those skyscrapers become isolating prisons or thriving homes. Young leaders can innovate faster than ever before, but without guidance, they risk creating a future that is breathtakingly efficient but devastatingly empty. And that is why I need you, because only you can help infuse meaning into the relentless march of progress. I know some people might laugh at the idea of hiring life consultants. They might think it sounds soft, unnecessary, or hopelessly outdated. But let me tell you this. The greatest mistakes in human history were not made because of a lack of intelligence. They were made because of an absence of wisdom. Armies marched into unwinnable wars. Businesses chased reckless profits that led to ruin. And leaders sacrificed their people for personal power, not because they didn't know better, but because they refused to listen to the voices of those who had lived long enough to warn them.
This job would be a bulwark against that kind of folly. You would be the one in the room saying, I have seen this before. I know where this path leads. Let's choose a different way. And maybe, just maybe, that small shift could change everything. Let me tell you about a real person. His name is Robert. He is 63 years old from Ohio.
He had retired once already and genuinely thought his most productive years were behind him. But he decided to give this consultant idea a try. At first, he was consumed by self-doubt. He asked me, "Elon, what could I possibly have to offer your people? They are all smarter than me, younger than me, and faster than me." And I told him, "Robert, they might have the speed, but you have the map. And without the map, speed just means getting lost faster." So Robert joined us. There was no fanfare, no title that would make headlines. He was just a quiet, observant presence, often sitting at the back of meetings, simply listening. Then one day, he spoke up. A team was planning a massive rollout of a new project. It was fast, risky, and technologically impressive. Everyone in the room was swept up in the excitement. But Robert leaned forward and, in a calm voice, asked a series of simple questions. What happens if this fails in the middle of winter in a cold climate? Who carries the cost? Who bears the risk for the customer? Do we have a plan for the people who will be depending on this? Silence. No one had asked those questions. No one had even thought to. And that single moment of inquiry changed the entire strategy. The project ended up being delayed by 3 months. At first, the young engineers were frustrated, seeing it as a needless slowdown. But when it finally launched, it worked flawlessly. There were 0 major breakdowns. Customer satisfaction rose by 42% compared to the last rollout. Internal efficiency went up by nearly 30% because fewer emergency fixes were needed. Do you know what the finance team calculated afterward? That Robert's single intervention, those few simple questions, saved the company an estimated $32 million. Think about that for a second. $32 million from one moment of lived wisdom. But that was only the beginning. Robert started mentoring small groups of employees, just 5 or 6 at a time. There were no PowerPoint presentations, no complex charts, no dry lectures. There were just conversations. He asked them about their goals, their fears, and their families. He showed them how to see beyond the immediate deadline and think about long-term consequences. Within 6 months, employee turnover in the groups he mentored dropped by more than half. Productivity increased, not because they worked longer hours, but because they worked with more clarity, purpose, and balance. Then something remarkable happened. People started requesting Robert's time, not because their manager told them to, but because they wanted to. In fact, the waiting list to sit down with him became longer than the list to meet with most department heads. Why? Because Robert offered something no manager or algorithm could provide: perspective without judgment. He wasn't there to discipline or to demand. He was there to guide. And for that reason, people trusted him implicitly. The data backed this up. Internal surveys showed that employees who interacted with Robert reported being 80% more confident in their decision-making. 80%! That is not a small number. Confidence like that doesn't just change a workplace, it changes lives. People went home less stressed. They reconnected with their families. They stopped burning out. All because someone with decades of lived experience was there to remind them that a successful career is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And Robert was not the only one. We brought in a woman named Linda, 58, a former teacher from Texas. She had spent her decades not in boardrooms, but in classrooms. What she brought to the table was completely different, yet equally valuable. She had a teacher's uncanny ability to see when teams were not truly listening to each other. She saw how communication was breaking down because people were too busy preparing their own replies instead of actually hearing what was being said. Linda started running simple listening workshops. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but after just 3 months, the number of project delays attributed to miscommunication dropped by nearly 60%. 60%! Just because someone with the patience of a career educator reminded a group of geniuses how to slow down and pay attention. Or take James, 71, who used to run a small family-owned repair shop. You wouldn't think a man like that would have much to say to engineers designing global-scale systems. But James noticed something nobody else did. He saw that our supply chain was brittle, far too dependent on a single source for a critical component. He warned the team that if even that one link broke, the entire system would collapse. They listened, albeit reluctantly at first, and diversified their sourcing. Months later, when that primary supplier unexpectedly failed, our company barely flinched, while our competitors were sent scrambling for months. How much did James save us? A conservative estimate is at least $60 million, though it could easily be more. So when people laugh at the idea of hiring life consultants, I tell them about Robert, Linda, and James. None of them were famous. None of them were former chief executive officers. None of them had written best-selling books on management. They were just people who had lived, who had learned, and who were willing to share. And because of them, entire divisions ran smoother, profits grew, stress fell, and trust increased.
What this journey with Robert, Linda, and James has taught me is that wisdom is arguably the rarest and most valuable resource in the world. We are drowning in data, flooded with information, and surrounded by endless technology. But wisdom, that only comes from time, from scars, from victories and failures both. And every year, as more and more experienced people retire and step back, we are losing this resource faster than we realize. Unless we make a conscious choice to use it. Unless people like you decide to step forward. So let me ask you directly. If Robert could do it, why not you? If Linda and James could change the course of our company, why not you? What is stopping you from becoming the voice in the room that saves someone from repeating a mistake you already survived? What is stopping you from being the calm in the storm, the steady hand on the tiller, the quiet reminder of what truly matters? Because here is the final thing I want you to understand. Technology will keep moving forward, whether you are part of it or not. But wisdom cannot be automated. It cannot be coded into an algorithm. It cannot be replaced by a machine. Wisdom is carried by people, and people like you have it in abundance. The only question is whether you will choose to use it. So I will leave you with this. Imagine I called you tomorrow, just as I called Robert. Imagine I said, "We need your voice. We need your story. We need your perspective." Would you step into that room? Would you share what you have learned? Would you take the seat at the table that has been waiting for you all along? And perhaps the bigger question is this: if not now, then when? If this story made you stop and think, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone in your life who might need to be reminded that their wisdom still matters more than ever. Subscribe now, because the next story I share might be the one that changes how you see your own life. And here is my final question for you. If I called you tomorrow with this offer, would you take the seat at the table, or would you hesitate? And if wisdom truly is the rarest resource, what is the first piece of yours that you would give to the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will be reading them.